Hello and welcome to Lean Excel Solutions. Today we will learn how to design this Learning and Development Insights dashboard in Power BI. An interactive dashboard designed specifically for HR professionals, training coordinators, and department heads seeking insights into training metrics across the organization. This dashboard enables you to drill down into your data using various slices, providing valuable insights. What's new in this dashboard? A new feature allows you to change the theme of the entire dashboard with a single click. Furthermore, it can be easily customized to your own color preferences by simply updating a few measures. Additionally, you will learn how to toggle between different values in visuals. As an example, you can switch instantly between the number of trainees trained and the number of training hours completed by a trainer, and for the training topic. This flexibility extends to department overviews as well. In previous tutorials, we created a similar dashboard in Excel in two parts. During these sessions, we discussed the details of the dashboard. This includes datasets, visuals, key performance indicators, and even the use of VBA for capturing user inputs for trainee and training records. We will use the same datasets we used in those tutorials, which include employee, trainer, and trainee records. If you have not watched these tutorials, it is highly recommended that you do so in order to gain a comprehensive understanding of the functionality of Power BI we are going to discuss in this tutorial. You can find links to those tutorials in the description or at the end screen of this tutorial. Let's now take a look at the steps we will follow in this tutorial. Having completed the introduction step, let's begin the next step, importing and transforming the data. Now, let's open the blank Power BI report and begin with importing our data tables. Go ahead and select all three tables. Then click on Transform Data. This action will take us to the Power Query Editor, where we can perform various data transformation steps. First, let's add month and month name columns based on the date column. We will add these new columns using a date function from the Add Column tab. In the month name column, you will see the full names of the months. We'll modify this to show only the first three letters. To achieve this, we'll use the extract function. We will perform this step under the Transform tab, not under the Add Column tab, as we want to extract the characters from the same column, not create a new one. Select first characters and enter 3. Here we have it. Let's repeat the same for the trainee record table. The employee database table contains a column for target training hours for each employee. We'll now extract the actual training hours completed from the trainee record table. Although we could create a measure for this in the report, but let's add it here directly for simplicity. For this, we will use the Merge Queries option. Select the trainee record as a second table for merging. Let's use Employee ID column for merging, which has unique values in our employee database table. Now, expand this and from the aggregate options, choose to sum of the training hours. Let's rename this new column to actual hours. Change its data type to whole number. With these transformations complete, let's click Close and apply to return to the main Power BI interface. We'll revisit the Power Query editor later if needed. Now we can see all three tables successfully added. We can view the complete data sets in the Table View tab. In the Model View, Power BI has automatically established relationships between the tables. It appears that these relationships are accurate. So, no further action is needed here. Now let's return to the Report view, as we prepare to move on to our next step, designing the headers. To begin with, let's add the background shapes. Set the height of the first header shape to 155. Then, copy and paste this shape to cover the remaining area of the canvas. For now, we will use random or default colors for these shapes. Next, copy the shape again for the third background and adjust its properties accordingly. Now, turn on the selection pane. It's good practice to name each object in the selection pane for easier identification. This not only helps in organizing objects on the report, but also simplifies later modifications. For the moment, let's hide both background 2 and background 3 to avoid any distractions while we prepare the rest of the report. Next, add the logo image and adjust its properties. Then, insert a text box for the title. In the header section, we'll focus on 3 key metrics. First, total training sessions conducted. Second, training hours, indicating the total number of hours of all training sessions. And the third, trainee training hours, which is the total number of hours completed by all trainees. For the first metric, add a card visual. You can select the count of any relevant column from the training record table. For this example, we'll use the training hours column. Adjust the formatting as needed, following the guidelines on the screen. Duplicate this card for the second metric. In the data options, select the sum of the training hours. Repeat the duplication for the third metric. This time, choose the sum of training hours from the trainee record to display the total hours completed by all trainees. Now, let's add text boxes for titles for these card visuals. Don't worry about color formatting at this stage. Select any color, and we will adjust it during the theme setup. Alright, we have added the cards and text boxes. In the selection pane, select them while pressing Ctrl, and we will group them together to make the report easier to manage and organize. Rename this group as Header. With the header completed, we are ready to move on to Step 4, Top Metrics Insights. Let's begin by adding background shapes for our first metric, Top Trainer. Add a circular shape to serve as the icon background. Next, insert the image icon. This is the same icon used in our Excel dashboard, taken from Excel's built-in library, and saved as a PNG image. Let's copy the text box from the header section for the title. Let's adjust its position in the selection pane so it appears on top of the shapes. This demonstrates how the selection pane can be used effectively to organize our report elements. Modify the text box as needed. Now, let's copy the card visual from the header to display the name of the top trainer. In the Data option, select the trainer column from the training record table. Initially, it will display the first trainer's name from the table, but we need to showcase the trainer with the highest training hours. To achieve this, add the trainer column to the filter on this visual section. Then under Filter Type, select Top N. In the By Value field, we must specify the criteria on which the top N should be filtered. In this case, we will filter based on the number of training hours delivered, so we can add the training hours column to the By Value field. Before proceeding, ensure the training hours column is set to Summarize. But here we cannot see the summation sign in front of it. Therefore, let's change it to Sum here, and observe that the summation sign appears in front of the column name. Now let's drag training hours to By Value. This is where we need to specify the number of top values we wish to consider. In our case, we need only one trainer, which is the top trainer. Once the filter is applied, we can see that Trainer 4 has delivered the most training hours. Copy the card visual again to display the training hours delivered by this top trainer. Replace the trainer column in the data option with the training hours. The filter settings will remain the same here. Copy and modify the title text box next to the Training Hours card, changing the text to Training Hours. With the top trainer metrics visual ready, group its objects and rename the group accordingly. Next, duplicate this setup for the second metric, top training topic, and modify it accordingly. In the data option, replace the trainer column with the training topic. Adjust the filter to focus on the topic column instead of the trainer. Replace the icon to correspond with the top training topic. This completes the second metric. Copy this setup once more for the third metric, top trainee, and align it appropriately. Temporarily unhide background 3 to check the alignment of the visuals, making adjustments as needed. Once aligned, hide the background 3 again and finalize the properties of the top trainee metric. With the top metrics section completed, we are now ready to move on to Step 5, Performance Visuals. For assessing trainer performance, we'll begin by adding a clustered bar chart. In the y-axis, add the trainer column. For the x-axis, we aim to showcase two aspects: the total training hours delivered by each trainer, and the number of trainees each trainer has taught. Select the Training Hours column from the training record for total training hours. For the number of trainees, use the count of the employee ID column from the trainee record table. However, our goal is to display a single bar with a switch button allowing us to toggle between training hours and number of trainees. Using a unique approach, we'll achieve this in 3 steps. 1. Create a reference table. 2. Add a measure. 3. Add a slicer. First, to creating a reference table, navigate to the Power Query Editor and create a new table. Named it as Reference Trainer. Add 2 columns, option and value. In the option column, enter training hours and number of trainees, which we will use as a slicer. Assign values 1 and 2 respectively to each in the value column. Once done, load the table. After that, click Close and apply to return to Power BI. Let's check in the model view to ensure no unintended relationships have been formed with the new table. This looks fine. Let's return to report view. Now second, we will add a measure. When the sum of values is 1, which is the training hours value, then sum of training hours, otherwise distinct count of the employee IDs to reflect the number of unique trainees trained by each trainer. Now, use this measure on the x-axis of the trainer performance chart. The chart now displays a single bar for each trainer, as intended. Third, to enable switching between training hours and number of trainees, add a slicer link to the option column from the reference trainer table. With this slicer, the trainer performance visual will dynamically switch between the 2 metrics. Once the functionality is set, let's proceed to format the visual. Now, copy the trainer performance visual and adjust it to display the performance for training topics. With the trainer performance section complete, we are now ready to progress to Step 6, Trend Analysis. Now, let's add a bar chart for monthly trends. Select the month name column from the training record table and the training hours column from the trainee records table. However, you'll notice that sorting by month name initially arranges the months alphabetically. But we want to display them in chronological order. To do this, we need to sort the month name column based on the month column. For that, switch to Table View. Select the month name column, then use the Sort by Column drop-down to choose the month column. Returning to the report view, you'll see the month name column now correctly sorted by month order. Let's use the formatting from the trainer performance visual using the Format Painter. Then, modify any remaining properties as needed after formatting. In the next chart, we will to show departmental adherence percentage. First, we will add a measure to calculate the adherence percentage. The formula is straightforward. Divide the actual training hours by the target training hours. Let's copy the monthly trend chart and adjust it to display the departmental percentage adherence. With this section completed, we are now ready to move on to Step 7, Trainee Performance Target Tracking. To effectively represent trainee target achievement, we'll start by adding a conditional column to differentiate the status of each trainee's target achievement. This status column will be based on the adherence percentage. If the adherence percentage is greater than 1, label it as greater than 100%. Else another condition, if the adherence percentage is less than 0.8, label it as less than 80%, otherwise, label it as between 80 to 100%. With the status column ready, we'll proceed to create a donut chart. Add the status column to the legend, and the count of employees to the value. Next, format and adjust the properties to ensure it's visually appealing and informative. Now, let's add a clustered bar chart to display employee adherence percentage. Add the employee name column and the adherence percentage measure to the chart. Initially, the chart will be sorted by adherence percent, but let's change the sorting to be based on the employee name. Let's format it. With this, let's move on to Step 8, Department View Design. In this step, we'll employ a similar strategy to what we used for the performance visuals, specifically the addition of a switch control to toggle between training hours and average training hours per employee. So, let's add a new table for it. Instead of going to the Power Query, we can add a new table directly by clicking on Enter Data. Create the table as we did previously. Let's check for any new relationships formed. Now we will add a measure for the average training hours per employee. The formula for calculating the average number of training hours per employee is the sum of actual training hours divided by the number of employees. Next, create another measure for the slicer values, similar to what we did earlier. If the sum of the value is 1, then actual training hours, else average training hours per employee. Let's copy the existing slicer and modify it accordingly. Change the data options relating to the reference department table. Now, add a tree map to visualize the department view. Add the department column into the category, and use the department slicer measure for the value. Proceed to format the tree map for optimal readability and visual appeal. Here we completed the department view. Before we move on to the next step, let's do a quick review to make sure we didn't miss anything. This value for top trainee hours doesn't seem right. Let's check. Alright, the filter needs to be applied to employee name and not to training hours. Let's correct it. With these adjustments, our department view design is complete. We are now ready to proceed to step 9, slicer integration. We'll now begin by adding our first slicer for the department. In the Excel dashboard tutorial, we have discussed about what columns to use from which tables for the slicer considering table relationships. The same approach will be used here as well. Add the department column from the employee database table to the slicer. Then, proceed to format and modify its properties. Next, let's duplicate the department slicer and adjust it for the trainer slicer. For this, add the trainer column from the training records table to the slicer. Copy the trainer slicer once again, this time modifying it for the training topic. Replace the trainer column with the training topic column. Lastly, we'll add a slicer for the month. Insert the month name column into this slicer. Instead of the usual vertical style, we'll present this slicer in a tile format for a distinct look and feel. Proceed to format it accordingly. With these slices in place, our dashboard is now complete and fully functional. It's time for the final and most important step of this tutorial, setting up the theme. We'll establish the dashboard's theme using three main actions: adding a theme table, creating color measures, and applying these measures to our visuals. This approach is similar to what we used for adding switch controls for performance and departmental visuals. So, let's start by adding a new table for the theme slicer. Name it and add 2 columns. The theme will be blue and teal, so add it accordingly. Load the table. In the model view, you may notice the newly added table established automatic relationships with other tables. These are not required, so let's remove them. Next, duplicate this slicer for the theme and update it as needed. In the second step, we will add 7 measures, each representing a color code for the blue and teal themes. Additionally, we will use these color codes to indicate red, yellow, and green for target achievements. Now, let's begin with the first measure for background 1. Measures can include color codes or color names within a double inverted comma. At the moment, we will only use the theme name in the measure and duplicate it for other measures. After that, we will replace each name with their corresponding color code one by one. Now let's replace the theme names in the measures with the specific color codes. Now that all measures are set, it's time to apply them to our visuals. Before that, let's select a theme that aligns with our intended color scheme, ensuring consistency across the dashboard. This approach is particularly useful for visuals like the tree map, where measures might not be directly applicable. Now let's apply these measures to visuals. Looking at background 1, we can see that it has the default color based on the theme selection. To use the color defined with measures, click on the FX icon. In the drop-down, select Field Value, and then choose the appropriate measure. Repeat this process for backgrounds 2 and 3. We can use the same method wherever the FX icon appears, like for the border's color. Continue applying these theme colors to other visuals as demonstrated on the screen. To save time, I am going to demonstrate it faster. You can watch it at a slower pace by adjusting the playback speed. Now that the header section is complete, let's move on to the top metric. Here, we need to format only the shapes, the rest is fine. Now let's move on to performance visuals. Here, we will format the first visual and use its formatting for other visuals using Format Painter. Now that the trainer performance chart is formatted correctly, let's use it for others. Now let's move on to the next visual. Alright, we will format the slices now. With these settings, when you click on the theme slicer, the entire dashboard's theme will dynamically change in accordance with your selection. As a final step in this tutorial, we will make these bar and donut chart colors dynamic based on changes in adherence percent. Let's add a measure to make the bar color dynamic. As for the formula, it's the same as we used for the status column, only now instead of text we'll use the color name. Now let's apply this measure to data labels. For better visualization, we'll replace the color name with the color code we decided on. Okay, let's apply it to the bar color now. The bar colors will now dynamically change based on fluctuations in employee adherence percentages. In the donut chart, you will notice we do not have an option for conditional formatting under the colors option. Instead, we have a classification based on the status column. Therefore, we will directly format it according to the category using the color code. tree map data labels do not need decimal places, so let's remove them. With this step, our Learning and Development Insights dashboard in Power BI is completed and it is fully functional. I hope you found this video helpful and enjoyable. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. See you soon.